He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Tēnā koutou irirangi te motu I te pūtea tautoko kārawe. Kia ora, my name is Moana Maniapoto. In this podcast series, The Negotiators, we meet the gutsy characters who steered their tribes through a minefield of complex treaty settlement negotiations. These are their stories. In this episode of The Negotiators, we meet a teacher of te reo Māori who became the lead negotiator for Raukawa. Chris McKenzie was a school teacher when his runanga asked him to represent them at Hui, just until they completed the search to find a negotiator. It took Chris a year to realise there was no such search, and in 2007 he was seconded to lead the treaty negotiations.
There's histories that we as a country skirt around the edges of truth of. People know somebody sold some land and somebody brought it, and so bad luck, and there were a few fights, but Māori were fighting each other anyway. Very few people get to the heart of the truth about how systematic it was that we were stripped of our land.
We're Māori, and we won't get justice till we've got a Māori flag.
Today, we are strong enough and honest enough to learn the lessons of the last 150 years.
You have not honoured the treaty.
And to admit that the treaty has been imperfectly observed.
My name is Chris. I am the great-grandson of Tūkorehe. His father fought at Ōrākau, and the Crown forces killed him. Then his son went to the court, and you stripped him of his land. Then his grandson was part of a group of people that petitioned the Crown, and you denied their petition. Then his son, he laid a claim in the Waitangi Tribunal. He did that in 1987, and nobody responded to him for his justice for the next 20 years, and I am his son. And for the last 6 generations, we have waited for you to come and tell you how we feel.
Nigel Tehiko, a respected historian, joined Chris on the negotiating team.
We would look at tribes like Tūwharetoa, like Waikato Tainui. They've got ariki. They've got sir this or dame that. We had a school teacher, a social worker, and a tree hugger.
It would be fair to say that I characterise my time as lead negotiator as both the best times of my life, the times that I felt most proud, and the worst times of my life that you understood now probably better than anyone else in the tribe, your tribe's dark and horrible history of their engagement with the Crown. Tokoroa has been home to my mother's people since one of the tohunga from the Tainui Waka took Hotiroa's daughter as his wife, and they moved inland, naming all of the places, all of the hills, all of the valleys, all of the streams. And from that time through till today, we have had and continue to have enduring ahika in our area. The people of Raukawa in the Central North Island did not sign the treaty, and for the longest time withheld any sort of non-Māori interference in their areas. They joined the Kingitanga Collective, they partitioned their lands off, they fought at many places alongside Waikato Tainui to ensure that they would never have to give up their lands.
The Truth and Reconciliation Day was an opportunity for Raukawa Uri to present their kōrero around the impact of Crown breaches on them and their iwi. A number of accounts were told through different perspectives.
One of the witnesses in Truth and Reconciliation Day spoke of her great-great-grandfather, Te Pairata, taking his family to church in Rangiawhia and being spotted by Crown troops who felt that it was a build-up of a army presence, even though it wasn't. And so the town was surrounded and sacked, despite the fact that they were waving a white flag out the window. The church was set alight, and when people tried to escape, they were shot as they ran out the front door. Luckily, beneath the boards, the floor of the church was dirt, and people dug a small hole in the back and managed to get a few people, including a number of children, out. And they made their way back to our chief, who then decided Raukawa would be engaged in the war against the Crown. Ōrākau was 300 people, 150 men and 150 women and children, shooting outdated and old guns. They ran out of bullets. They were shooting stones and peach pits against an army that had been well drilled, had cannons and the latest weapons. Those 300 not only held them out for days, but instead of surrendering, they opened the front gates and they charged. And of the 300, maybe 1/7 of them survived. Their only sin was that they refused to sell their land. They joined a group of people who refused to sell their land. And because we charged, we had no time to go back and bury our dead. Our last most significant chief probably is under the road. I was working at St. Stephen's in its final years, and I was going home to help at the tribe. I decided to move my young family to Japan. I managed to secure a job at a university lecturing. One of my kōrero rang and said, "Oh son, it's time to come home, and we've got you a job teaching at the local high school, and we've even got you a house. When they ring you, you don't say no." So I said, "All right, I'll give you a year kōrero, and then we'll see what happens."
Up until the 1980s, Kaingaroa was a state-owned asset. Since then, iwi have been waiting for the Crown to transfer forest land like this for use in treaty settlements.
And at the time, there was a large Central North Island C&I settlement going on, and it involved some of our forests. And we kept getting letters to say somebody has to come to a meeting, but there was nobody available in the tribe to go to these meetings. So they asked me to manage the treaty claims, and just until they found the appropriate person. For every couple of months, I would check in with the board to say, how are we going in the search for, a negotiator? And it wasn't until about a year later that I realised there was no search. That's how a school teacher of Te Reo Māori became the negotiator. One of my rookie mistakes was trying to be transparent and sending our original map out for everybody to make some comment on. We received a letter from a tribe, a neighbouring tribe, to say that the negotiations team map Takahi's on the mana of an entire people, that the name of a waka has been besmirched now, and that we will fight you forever if you dare try and impose your authority anywhere within these boundaries.
And that was far from Chris's only challenge.
A large and significant tribe brought a busload of kaumātua down to our board meeting and said, "Your team is too young, you need to get rid of them." My life has been threatened. Dissident groups who haven't agreed posted shotguns on my Facebook page. These are regular things in the life of a negotiations team and a negotiator. From my perspective, negotiations took a little bit of a toll on my health and well-being, but Probably that's because we were concurrently negotiating 3 settlements. The Crown wanted to settle the Waikato River, so we were pulled into the Waikato River, and the Crown wanted to settle the Sianai Forest with some other tribes, and Raukawa were pulled into those settlement negotiations.
To expect that we might sit at the table and make some quick decisions was probably a little short-sighted on our behalf.
We got 3 opportunities to put our history in front of the Crown. The central claim was Y443. It was about the unjust taking of our lands. It was about the loss of our identity as a result.
And as with so many iwi, that loss happened mostly at the hand of the Native Land Court.
Essentially, the Native Land Court would post in the Gazette a note saying, we are going to put title on this land. If you think you own it, you need to turn up to court. Our people would travel to the Native Land Courts, and they would have to survive in town. They would have sold off portions of their land so that they could get the surveyor to do the survey, the lawyer to represent them in court, the translator to translate. Crown appointed and paid speculators would say, I'm not sure you've got enough money for today, but we will advance you some money as long as if you are successful in getting this portion of your land back, you give part of it to us. And in many cases, by the time that our people finally got a judgment in court, most of their land was already gone. Our chiefs went to Wellington with a petition to say, please stop bringing your courts. And the Crown responded by the single biggest devastating act on Raukawa. And in the space of a couple of hours at one land court, the 4 largest blocks in the history of land block takings happened to Raukawa, to Waikato Tainui, to the Upper Wanganui, and to the Maniapoto people. And that forever changed the face of Raukawa. We were forced then to find the small bits of reserves that were left behind for us. And we survived. And after a while, we stopped talking about being Raukawa. It's been devastating. This process is divisive. People know it and people fear it. And for the average tea rooms or coffee rooms around the country at the end of the 80s and early 90s, the word treaty was a dirty word.
Organised to seek justice, so upliftment is assured. Won't go away, treaty won't go away.
And amongst our own people, there wasn't a lot of understanding about what the settlement process was. There were times when we would turn up at the marae and we would say, hey, we're the treaty team and we'd like to talk to the whānau about how the settlements are going. And we would be ordered off the marae. At one particular marae, I ate more rotten corn than I ever cared to, and just so that the significant kaumata would sit down for 5 minutes and have a conversation with me about what we were getting at.
Fellow negotiator Nigel recalls Chris's approach to different hui.
He was very inclusive in his approach. It never was a Chris thing. It was always, well, actually, let's go and talk to our people.
Most of the issues I see in some of the negotiations are around a lack of transparency and communication with your own people. In Wellington, you need different skills.
During this period, Chris Finlayson was the Treaty Negotiations Minister.
Finlayson, like many, many others, actually had no idea who we were. When they talked about Raukawa, they would always compare us with Otaki. It became hoa. And so every time we would go down to Wellington and speak with the minister, we had to remind him where we were.
The process of engaging with the Crown itself is very difficult. You have little to no money at the beginning. You have to quite quickly understand 200 years of shared history in whakapapa. You have to understand and negotiate overlapping claims with 9 tribes in your area, travel to 20 marae constantly twice a year to update them.
Not everybody jumped on board.
A small group of our own people disagreed with the pathway that we were taking and pulled away. And because of this divisive government process and the way that it operates and functions, that split now is wide and it will be there forever. The term negotiator, I don't think is correct. There is very little negotiation that takes place. There is a Crown process and an infrastructure in place which excludes negotiation the vast majority of the time. On the most part, you dealt with a team from the Office of Treaty Settlements. They were, in the most part, very new to the policy of the area.
We would work with a team, develop a relationship with that team, and then the team would be reassigned to other areas.
And in fact, it was infuriating sometimes that you brought with you a group of people who had literally dedicated their life to this work just to turn up to a meeting for people to be at times very flippant, very arrogant, very rude.
At that particular time as well, Tūhoi were going through their negotiations.
Chris Finlayson was the Minister for Treaty Negotiations at the time.
To put it bluntly, Finlayson was entranced with the Tūhoi story. And so we needed something to capture him. And so in 2010, we took him on the bus ride. After that, his whole mindset seemed to change, and he started to understand the mamae and the hurt of Raukawa. But it took a while. It took a while.
Taupo is the greatest, and Taupo is the endless source of the Waikato River.
One of the most bitter stories that I remember being told is by a nanny who's alive still today. She's 92. Her and her grandparents lived on their traditional family lands their entire life. And one day, somebody turned up at their place and said, via the Public Works Act, we're building a dam here now, and you have to leave, but we'll pay you some compensation. And her grandfather said, no, thank you. We're quite happy. Our family's lived here for 400 years. They built the dam anyway.
Men and machines working to give the North Island new and greater sources of electric power.
They stayed on their lands as the water crept further and further up the valley and closer to their house. And it wasn't until the lake was at their front doorstep that the truck came and took them away, moved them to Taupo, put them in a house where for the first time in their life they had to pay rent. So they walked back and they were forcibly removed again. Every time she spoke to one of the OTS staff or the ministers, she cried for the loss of their land.
Finlayson was aware of the constant changing faces of the Ministry for Treaty Negotiations.
It's not that the Crown's malevolent, but so often I think the Crown lacks an institutional memory.
The Crown has a very simple formula for deciding what your entire package is worth. How big are you, tribally? How did you lose your land? How many people do you have? Were you invaded and killed? Or did we just steal it by the courts? Or did we only take bits and pieces from Public Works Act? And then somebody at Treasury enters that into his calculator and he comes out with a number. And the minister offers that number. That number is offensive and embarrassing to every tribe that has ever got that first offer. So the strategy then is to use the different layers available to us to increase that number. In the dark days of negotiation, people would attack anything they could to get leverage. That meant that if your neighbours were settling, you'd go and oppose them just to get a little bit of leverage on the Crown. And this was a difficult time. You have to do an assessment of the tens and thousands of Crown-owned properties, value them, prioritise them, check for commercial sustainability, overlay that with ones that are core and non-core so that you can assess which ones might be available to be returned, see which ones you can afford to buy, and when all is said and done, you can afford to buy 1% of them. The Apology Day, the Truth and Reconciliation Day, was a highly emotional day for the people who felt that this was a day to look the Crown in the eye and say, here is the impact.
This is an opportunity for the Crown to listen, not to talk. This is an opportunity for members of the iwi to recount their history of dealings with the Crown.
We can visibly see the fruits of deceit, the fruits of repression, suppression, and oppression.
For many people, you have to get your head around the fact that this negotiation isn't justice. I had a number of sleepless nights wondering whether or not this was a package that I could even consider taking back and showing our people. It was, in the end, and in hindsight, embarrassing and pitiful, the redress that was offered to Raukawa. Raukawa lost 450,000 odd hectares. I think we were given back 100. Then there's the commercial basket. And this is the one that always hits the media. This is the money basket. Frankly, I haven't met a tribe, including Raukawa, that wanted the money. We would have traded the money in any day for the land. You'll get very little land back. It will be the worst land and the least valuable that the Crown can give, and you will have to put the best case for it, even though it's clearly justified. And I remember getting phone calls for days from people who would ring and cry and say, Matua, I've just read the traditional history report, and you're talking about my grandmother in here and the amazing things that she did, and this is my line, and I never knew that this was my whakapapa, and this happened everywhere we went. My children are connected to their Raukawa history in a way that I never was at their age. If there was a big regret, it would be that the people who really were the champions and leaders of the claims, the people who brought the claims in the first place, the people who did the research, many of them didn't make the end. By the end of 3 of these negotiations, I was physically and spiritually worn out and just needed to get away. Without telling anyone except my wife, called a regular board meeting, and the first order of business was my resignation. The pull to serve your people when you've been doing that for so long is immense, and I still feel it. I feel it now. But I am so glad that I made the break when I did, because there are always good people, especially in a post-settlement era. There are always good people at the helm of the tribe, and so it is with us.
What's important for us today is to actually understand and learn who we are as a people and to reinvigorate our identity as Raukawa.
I know there have been knockers about the iwi elite and what the tribal runanga are doing, but there is, I have no doubt about it, a quiet revolution taking place in every tribal board room around the country. And I think that in the future, we will address some of the issues and inequalities that we face as Māori in this country, and the identity issues that we have within our own tribal space. The best is yet to come.
Chris McKenzie became a negotiator in 2008. In 2014, Raukawa received around $52 million in cash for the breaches of the treaty during conflicts in Waikato and Tauranga, as well as the subsequent confiscation of Raukawa land and use of native land laws to facilitate further land alienation. Raukawa received a Crown apology 150 years after the Battle of Ōrākau. Thanks for listening to The Negotiators, produced by Tāwera and Black Pearl Productions. Made with the support of NZ On Air and RNZ. You can find the podcast on the RNZ website, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Tēnā koutou irirangi te motu I te pūtia tautoko, ka rawe.